Oh shit. Here we go again.
The Seattle Sounders sweep the Houston Dynamo in the first round of the MLS Cup playoffs, but will face off against LAFC in the next round. When will this just end? I've spoken about us facing off against LAFC many times this season, so I thought this time around, for this video, I'll be joined with Will, also known as MLS Moves, who we had on earlier this season for a video on the channel. And for this video, we're going to be just discussing everything surrounding this upcoming match against LAFC. And by the way, I will be doing a watch along for this match, so make sure to go turn on the bell notification on the stream to be notified when I go live. So without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, Will, first and foremost, long time no see. Last time you were behind your logo. Now this time we actually get to see your face. So happy to have you back on. You're one of the very few returning guests ever on my videos. It's not a commonality.
Yeah, hopefully that's a good thing. Yeah, last time we talked about this, I was just a faceless logo. Me and you were both crashing out on the Sounders, talking about how bad they were and how dog shit they were, and probably getting some people riled up about a couple of things that I'm sure we'll talk about today. But looks a lot different than it did, what, 8 months ago?
Yeah, a
Something like
while
that.
ago. Let's first get started with the match against Houston. Sounders sweep the Dynamo, but obviously on surface level, the way things panned out, it was a lot closer than it seemed like if you just say, "Oh, Sounders sweep the Dynamo." But what was your thoughts on that tie?
I thought it would be a closer series than what it was, but in 2 games, Houston went down a player, right? So obviously that put them at a deficit. They didn't really get a full match with 11 men on the field. Hector Herrera crashed out pretty bad. They say that wasn't the deciding factor why he isn't going to return to Houston, but I mean, I don't believe in coincidences, you know? I mean, that seems pretty convenient. I think that they took care of business. It wasn't as of a dominating win as I'd like, man. I didn't see anything crazy. It's just kind of like it was kind of a shit show altogether, and they just happened to come out on top of the shit show. I still have a lot of questions about this team. You know how I feel about Seattle. We'll definitely talk about that more in detail, but I wasn't impressed with it. But I mean, hey, they made it to the next round. They get to play LAFC. And I just think that this is a series they should have won, especially, like I said, down 10 men in 2 games. I'm not impressed with it, but I mean, I guess you have to give them their flowers.
I think things would have been a whole different story, be it because it was, in my opinion, Houston's 2 best players that got sent off across the 2 games, Karasky and Herrera. Like that's their 2 best players. And I think Sounders, to a degree, got fortunate with them two being boneheads, because the red cards were not necessary. They didn't need to happen. They just both were boneheaded moments. But all things considered, the difference between the 2 teams was 1 missed penalty. Across both those PK shootouts, there was only 2 missed PKs, and they both were by Houston, and that's what made the difference.
I just can't wait till we talk about LAFC whenever we get to that, because that's where the true test comes, and we will talk about how they have came up very short this season against them. But Houston wasn't able to score really. You know, Seattle, obviously, like we talked about, was fortunate to play against 10 men. Like, who the fuck isn't winning against 10 men in 2 games? Like, that's like that's heaven sent right there, right? I mean, they honestly should have pummeled them. Do you feel like either one of these matches was a dominating performance, honestly?
No, and I think maybe we could count on one hand how many shots on target they had across the 2 games, and the fact that the Dynamo were down to 10 men for what, 20-ish minutes in both games. Yes, granted, I will play devil's advocate. Well, obviously, when a team goes down to 10 men later into a match, they're going to bunker down. But like, even so, even when they were with 11 men and there was actually some ebb and flow in the game, still, I think the best chances fell to the Dynamo. Like Seattle across those 2 games, but that's like been the story of the season. It's like when they play against like a half decent to good team, Seattle just like haven't been able to break the team down.
Okay, first of all, when you're playing against 10 men in back-to-back games, and the fact that you have to beat them on PKs in both matches, like, what the fuck? But we talked about this, man. We said that they can't score goals consistently. This is their shtick, right? This is what they do. I mean, this team just doesn't. Oh man, are we crashing out early, or are we going to keep it tame? Are we going to like try to like keep it on the rails for a little bit? Because I don't love this team, man. I really don't love this team. I just think that they got all these pieces that are so old. Like, I mean, is it ever a good idea if I showed you the 2019 Seattle Sounders roster sheet and then I showed you today's, it damn near looks the same. Take out a couple players, man. Like they're not doing what you need to do to be a serious contender. And honestly, look, I know that you're an honest Sounders fan and you get a lot of shit for it, but like this team just isn't exciting to watch anymore. They used to be exciting. I hate watching the Sounders play at this point. I do. I hate it.
I think what really let down this series to Houston Dynamo's detriment was those red cards, just the boneheaded moment. Because the thing is, these weren't even red cards where Jordan Morris was through on goal and Daniel Steres took him down, anything like that. No, they were just both stupid by Carrasquilla and Hector Herrera. And that's what cost them.
Well, also too, like I kind of wonder to myself, what would this series look like if they didn't make those boneheaded decisions? Would they have lost? I personally had this series going to 3 games and Houston winning, just because I'm just not that high on Seattle. I'm just not high on them. I'm sure we'll talk about the coaching aspect later, but their players are just so fucking old. Like, as in, like they've been with the team so long. I just, it's just crazy how much they rely on some of these guys who haven't done shit in years. And Houston has spent some money, right? It's funny. It's hard to believe Houston is kind of spending like the Sounders did 5, 6, 7 years ago. I mean, they did buy Pedro de la Vega, right? Which is a good signing when he's healthy to kind of, fill the shoes of Nicola Darrow. And I'm not saying he's not good, right? I think Pedro de la Vega is very good, but I just don't think he's good enough to make up for all the deficiencies they have on the rest of the roster.
And the lack of signings they've made like
In
these
the
last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, look, and keep in mind, I try to keep up with as many teams as I can, but off the top of my head, did they even make one significant signing this summer?
They didn't make a single signing. I think they might be the only MLS team to go 3 straight summer windows without a signing. Something like that. If I'm paraphrasing, people could fact check us in the comments, but like it's something along those lines.
Yeah, and this is a team, maybe it's that Garth has left and they don't really know what to do at this point. Greg Weibel, obviously he's not very good, I don't think. I wouldn't be surprised if Pedro de la Vega was on a list that Garth created years ago that they've been scouting, and he's just like, hey, let me see. Let's see if they can get this guy. I don't
cheat sheet. He's like,
yeah, exactly.
Speaking at the test.
I don't think Weibel was like, yeah, man, that Pedro de la Vega, he's something special. We got to get that guy. I scouted him myself. I think he might have been something they already kind of knew about. And it's just sad because as a fan of the league, right? I don't have a team. If any of your viewers have never watched me or know who I am, I have no team. I support the league, and I want ambitious teams to like succeed and be rewarded for their, being ambitious. Obviously, Seattle was a team that I was always happy with because they did do things that most MLS teams didn't do. They spent $9 million on Clint Dempsey in 2013 when this league barely made any money. That was a huge signing. And where the hell has that been? Where has that been since then? They did sign Raul Ruiz. I can't hate. They did sign Raul Ruiz for like 6 or 7 million, and Nicola Darrow. But if you're spending $9 million in 2013 just by inflation and the times changing, you should be spending like 16 or 17 million on at least one guy by this point. Cincinnati's about to sign this striker from, I think it's Togo, which is like a small African country. They're about to drop $15 million on a striker. I swear to God, if the Sounders drop that, someone would have a fucking heart attack. Like, I don't think they could spend 15 million in FIFA on a player, man. If they had like the setting where you can like have your
financial takeover.
Yeah, exactly. And it's honestly, it sucks because even your rivals, the Portland Timbers, are spending more than you guys are at this point. Evander costs like 12 million. Jonathan Rodriguez, who was like their 4th choice goal or striker, they spent like $9 million on him. It's just, I don't know what they're doing and what their goal is. I don't know, man. I just think the Sounders are operating like it's MLS 2.0 still, and it's MLS 3.5.
It's like a new iPhone upgrade.
It is. Yeah, dude. Like they got an iPhone 4 still, and everybody else has got like the, Face ID on theirs and stuff, iPhone 15s or 16s, and they got an iPhone 4.
Moving on to talking about the game against LAFC. So obviously this is going to be the 5th time these two teams have faced off against each other this season. Seattle haven't scored a single goal, and I hate bringing up these stats, but it's just the big overlying things when it comes to this matchup. Seattle hasn't been LAFC since 2021. They haven't scored a goal against them from open play so far this season from those 4 previous matches. What do you think going in? I mean, I think it was pretty inevitable. When I did fan reactions, asked fans this question, most of them said, I think we'll beat the Dynamo. We don't think it'll be an easy tie, but I think we have enough to just get through to that one. But when we face against LAFC, the only delusion they have is who beats a team 5 times in a season. Like probably LAFC beating the Sounders, but what is your thoughts going into this game?
I think you guys are cooked. I mean, I don't think that Steve Cherundolo has ever lost to the Sounders.
No, I
I
don't
don't.
think so either.
So we're not even talking about 5 in a season. We're talking about never beaten them since 2022. And I think the Sounders at a bare minimum play the LAFC twice this season, and then in the playoffs if they meet up or any other tournament. Why would that change now? The Sounders have lost 9-1 in aggregate this year to the LAFC. If you want a silver lining, their best performance against LAFC was at LAFC. When they were playing at Lumen Field, it was a bloodbath every time. They were getting their ass handed to them. So I guess if you want to be, a little bit of optimistic, half glass half full, they did have a better performance at BMO. Kind of to piggyback off what we talked about a minute ago, LAFC is your club that's ran kind of in the modern MLS style, right? They're signing U22s. Even when they sell a U22, they're replacing them like literally the same offseason.
Instantly. Yeah.
It's a rotation, right? I mean, I honestly wonder if Seattle even know what the hell a U22 is at this point. Like they signed it and it's like permanent or something. Like they don't even know that you can sell them and replace them or that you have 3 of them now. Why would LAFC lose now? Their team is deeper. They're playing at home. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic. I'm going to give some fans hope because of this trend that has happened in the MLS Cup playoffs this season, right? This has been MLS Cup playoffs of goalkeepers. Veteran goalkeepers have done a lot of saving for these teams. The reason why Inter Miami got bounced in the first round was because Brad Guzan was on another one, dude. He said, I don't give a fuck what kind of free kick Messi scored in 2016 Copa America. I got PTSD to this day, and I'm on a revenge tour. Okay, that's what happened with Brad Guzan. He played out of his mind. He was saving everything, dude. Acrobatic. You would have never known that the man was 40 years old by the way he was playing in that series. I think Stephen Fry has been pretty good. I think he was very good in his 2 games against Houston. Now, and down the stretch, right? I mean, they weren't really scoring a lot of goals, but they weren't conceding a lot of goals either. And I think of all the teams in the league, they've conceded the least amount of goals. But I think that Stephen Fry is playing very well right now, kind of resurging. And it's funny, me and you had thought that his days were numbered and Thomas was going to take over. But I think that Fry is kind of playing himself back into like keeping.
And I like that. Thing is, this is what I want to see. Like, I don't mind if I maybe write off a player, say like, hey, like, or like and I think it's fine to criticize players. Like that's part of the gig. But I will say, and I think biggest credit, I think it's so overshadowed. I think Jackson Reagan, I couldn't believe he was the one that was the finalist for Defender of the Year because in my opinion, I think Yamar and Fry is the biggest reasons why Seattle's defense is so good. Not Reagan, not Nuhu, not Alex Roldan. It's them two. But yet they get the least amount of credit. But
No
yes,
problem.
Fry 100%. Just to piggyback off what you said.
Yeah, I think Stephen Fry is having his Brad Guzan moment. Like he's kind of I mean, I think when we look back on Fry, he's going to be remembered as a very good goalkeeper, one of the best in MLS history. Single-handedly won you guys your 2016 MLS Cup with that save he had on Josie Outdoor. One of the best saves I've ever seen. Crazy save, right? Yeah. I think he's having a resurgence, and that's good to see because, as you know, and I know because we watch football, not just MLS, goalkeepers can play into their later years. Like it's not like you're 35 and you're done. Like it's over. Sometimes you can still play at a very high level. And I think Stephen Fry just kind of needed a spark, like something to kind of re-energize him. And I think that Tom is kind of like lingering around, kind of pushing him, and like everybody talking about how he was the heir and he was going to take over, kind of reignited his like passion for the game. And he has been playing so well, man. Like I really think Yamar, like you said, and Stephen Fry, of all the people that deserves flowers on this team of like re-energizing, giving them a chance to win, those 2 are the ones that stick out above all else. It is those 2 guys. It's not anyone else. It's not Rusnak. It's not Morris. It's not Reagan. It's not Roldan. Either one. It is Yamar and it is Stephen Fry that is leading this team into a playoff run.
Like you said, I think those 2 guys, I think they're the biggest hope for what will happen for Seattle in this tie. And I'm scared. The thing is even though, like you said, like Seattle's best game this season was in LA, it's just like Seattle has never been. They've only been LAFC once, and again, this might give them hope. Again, this is the glass half full, like you said. The one time they have beaten LAFC in LA was that 2019 playoff game, which I'll never forget because that game was amazing in so many ways. That's the only time Seattle's ever beaten them.
Well, and also too, when you have a single elimination game, anything can
It can
happen.
happen. Yep.
Like LAFC could just come out there and shit the bed, just like Seattle could do the same thing, and it could be a disaster. And Stephen Fry could concede 5 goals, and then we're talking about how they need to switch to Thomas.
And the thing is too, what kind of worries me is we've seen some blowouts in this playoffs. Portland, Vancouver, Galaxy Rapids. Like we've seen some crazy score lines so far. And I'm a little worried. I don't think it will happen, but like if the shit really hits the fan, I would be so scared if something like that could happen for the Sounders. I wouldn't want to see it.
Do you think the extended break is going to benefit them or hurt them? Because they technically are going to have like 22 days off before or in between games.
In my opinion, I think it benefits LAFC more than it does Seattle.
I think that the another positive thing about Seattle going to this game is that LAFC currently have a striker they're paying $6 million who they just recently benched because he's just not giving them the production they need in Olivier Giroud. So they're going into a match where he came off the bench against Vancouver in Game 3, and obviously they don't really have a lot of confidence in him at this point. Stephen Fry's been good. Yamar has probably been the best center back in the second half of the season of anybody. Like I think he's better than any center back in the league. Honestly, if you look at his career in the league, I think he's better than Zimmerman. I think he's better than Steven Moreira. I think he's better than Matt Miazga. Just consistency. He's great. I don't know how LAFC are going to be able to win a game without a striker who can put goal, who can score. I mean,
Buanga.
well, Bouanga is also had a bad series. He only had 1 goal in the whole series, and it was a penalty.
Penalty.
So, and I don't like they had Matty Bogusz playing up top, and he's honestly a midfielder who was playing out of position as a winger, who was playing out of position as a striker. So I don't think that's a good option either. And I've watched all 3 of those matches. I sadly watched all 2 of the Seattle Sounders matches, and it was very painful to watch. And I think if you guys are being honest, you would agree with me too. It was very painful to watch. It's going to be an unknown game, honestly. I don't know what's going to happen. It could either be a complete shit show and Seattle was able to win on penalties, or it could be LAFC just pour the goals on them and just absolutely wreck them. I don't think that Seattle is going to be able to win if I'll make this prediction. If LAFC score 2 or more goals, Seattle will not win.
Oh yeah, well,
They
I could tell
cannot.
you that too.
Yeah, exactly. They cannot. If it's a scoring fest, they're not going to be able to compete. They're more of a slugfest. Make it ugly and hope to God you get to penalties like they did in the first 2 games.
I know we obviously spoke in the beginning of the season, and now we're at this point. Has any of your opinions changed, like with Schmetzer? Like, I was really disappointed the fact that we renewed him and put pen on paper before the playoffs even started. Like, who does that? Like, it's like as if like you renew Pep before the Champions League final or Ten Hag before the FA Cup final. Like, I just was so surprised. And a big compromise that I said was renew Schmetzer, but just give him a 1-year deal, but you give him a new set of players. See, is the problem the voice Schmetzer is giving out? Does he need a new set of players? Is it because these players aren't good? But don't like renew him before the playoffs and then give him a multi-year deal. And it's just like, I feel like it's almost like it's a little like spineless from us to be like, you know what? Let's just renew him before playoffs. We're good with Brian. We're not even gonna maybe even think about it like with other options. And I'm not saying like you had to go a different direction, but Jesus Christ, renew him after. At least make me feel like you guys like thought about it for a second.
Brian Schmetzer, we talked at the beginning of the season. I don't dislike Brian. I just think maybe his voice has become stale. Like maybe players don't really react to what he's saying anymore. But you know what would fix that? Get new players. But because they wouldn't be hearing the same message, it'd be different people. But I don't know, man. I think it was best for them to move on and like go in a different direction. Not because Brian is bad, just because things have become stale. When is the last time that the Seattle Sounders played an MLS Cup final? In a real one.
Real
Not
2019 then.
2019. Okay. That was 5 years ago. When's the last time they played in a Western Conference final?
2019. Yeah.
2019, right? So since LAFC's been in the league and been really good, Seattle really hasn't done much. Now they did win the Champions League, and I give them a lot of credit for that. But they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and change things up because what they're doing now is LAFC literally has the blueprint on how to just absolutely put the Seattle Sounders fire out. Like literally, they have not lost a game to them in the Dolo era. Like something has to change. I think that why they renewed him, right? And I'm just totally, I knew that they were renewing him, but this is speculation why. I think Craig Weibel just absolutely was terrified at having to hire the next manager and being solely responsible for this team, not just rebuilding, but hiring a new coach that's going to have to fill Brian's shoes. Now we know that Brian has came up short the last couple of years, but like we said a minute ago, he's won 2 MLS Cups. He's been to 4 MLS Cups. He's won a Champions League. So like when you guys hire a new coach, you're going to be expecting someone to get you back to that type of success. I think that scared the shit out of Craig Weibel. And not to mention, that's why I don't think he signed any players. He's kind of like wanting to have Brian be like not just the scapegoat, but kind of like take more responsibility and really lean on him for all this stuff because I don't think Greg knows what he's doing. I don't think he does. I mean, how do you not make a single signing in the summer when you're trying to compete for an MLS Cup? I mean, they are trying to compete, right? I mean, that is what they're doing. I mean, are we going to sit here and say that they don't have any holes or deficiencies as a club right now, as a team, that there's not a single like starting 11 spot they could have filled and brought more competition to? Of course they could have, right? Or they could have bought out Raul Diaz and maybe got another DP, maybe. I don't know. I'm just
Because it was
spitballing
very
here.
it was very clear from this, like, I think, like, a quarter way through the year when Morris was pretty much starting every single game that Raul was done, and then obviously it's now officially been announced he's not coming back next year, but it's like, no, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and so it's just been kind of a weird season, and I don't think that they wanted to. Was never there really wasn't competition. Like I don't think that they had to get this done, or Brian was going to go to Atlanta or Dallas or St. Do you really think that Brian was going to leave for St. Louis City? Really, you think he was going to leave his town he has been with for 20 years, 30 years, however long he's been in Seattle? It's been a long time, like in the area. You think he was going to leave Seattle for St. Louis City SC? I don't think he was going to do that. So there was no pressing need to re-sign him. But I think Craig, he panicked and he just signed him. I mean, look, man, we'll see how it goes next year because hopefully they'll make some changes. Raul will be off the books. I haven't looked to see who else will be off the books, but I know that there's a couple of players. I think they want to move off Xiao Felix because he's making like 1.5 million. Not Xiao
Ciao,
Felix,
Felix.
sorry, João Paulo. I think they're wanting to move off of him because he's making like 1.5. I'd be curious to see what João Felix would do in Seattle, right? But I think that there's some pieces that they want to move off of like that. I mean, this is going to be. And look, we still have a game to play. Like this is not, there's still a lot to be decided. But there's a lot of question marks too about this team heading into the offseason because they're going to have to do something. And especially if their fate is what you and I expect it to be, they're definitely going to have to do a lot of stuff this offseason.
Especially going into that Club World Cup, man. That's such a big deal in my opinion, and I think a lot of people are really underselling it. I think a small populace of Sounders fans, but maybe because they're not as knowledgeable about the bigger world of football, soccer in the world.
I'm going to be interested to see say that they move off Raul. What kind of striker are they going to go for? Are they going to go for the vet? Are they going to go for the young guy? I don't know what they're planning to do, but it's going to be interesting because I don't think that they can afford to make or miss that on that signing because their deficiency now is they can't score goals. If you can't score goals at the Club World Cup, you're gonna be the laughing stock of the tournament, and you're gonna get bounced very early.
Well, that's gonna be the end of the video. It's what ended up running is a long one. I know a lot of people like this kind of podcast style that we did last time too. So you guys gotta let me know in the comments down below. Did you like this type of video? Do we want to see Will back for a part 3 come next season? Because I have some things planned for the off season, but I think definitely people might enjoy having you back on for a 3rd time. So you guys got to let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget, smash the like button on today's video. We're going to be doing a watch along for this game, so you'll get my live reactions sitting right here and seeing what happens. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below of everything we discussed, and I hope you'll have a lovely day.